Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hashtag Clocked In with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Hashtag Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? Got a special guest here today. We have Bart Gray. He's the president of Global Jet Care, a worldwide air ambulance service. Bart, I'm so excited to have you here. I have a first question for you, and then we'll dive into your story. How did you get started with flying? How does that even happen?
Yeah, it's a bug you catch, really. I mean, I think that's it. Then you're just stuck with it for life, good or bad. But I started flying when I was in high school. I didn't really, I guess you don't know when you're a kid. You don't really. I guess you don't think about it as much. But I was always into airplanes and models and building model airplanes and stuff like that. And my mom actually worked for a company that manufactured car parts in Ohio. I grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, and she worked for a company that manufactured car parts, and they owned a Learjet as their corporate airplane, and they had offices in Michigan and offices in Florida, and they kind of flew their executives around. And my mom was in their computer, IT, HR, payroll kind of department there at the company. And she got an offer to go on the airplane one day. They were going to Boston for a meeting or something, and there was an open seat. And so she took me, and I don't even know how old I was. I was, I don't know, younger than 15. I mean, somewhere around younger than that. So I rode on the Learjet for the day, and I met the pilots. That's a super cool thing to do, when you're that age. So I met the pilots and ended up talking to one of the co-pilots there, and he was telling me where he went to college and what he did and how he became a pilot. And I just fell in love with it. I thought that's great. And then I had aspirations to go to the Naval Academy and ended up not working out. And sort of at the 11th hour, I went to Ohio University, and they had an aviation program. And the summer before I went to college there, I ended up getting my private pilot's license and at my little hometown airport, which put me a little head starting college that way. And yeah, and I got a degree in aviation and just took off from there. So yeah, that's how I fell into it. And like I said, it's definitely a bug that you just catch, and then you just it's the greatest ever.
Absolutely. I mean, and the idea of it is very interesting because it's like most people think of private jets, like I could never do that. I could never fly a plane. And you start to realize that the accessibility of planes and people want to encourage that. So like, is it accessible for people to even fly planes or like get
Oh,
trained
easily.
nowadays? Because like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, but I have so many friends, that they know I'm a pilot, and they always, hit me with, "Oh, I should have done that." And I'm like, "Well, do it now." Like, what are you waiting on? It's really, it's not that hard. It depends on the level you want to be at, just like anything else, any other, hobby. I mean, if you want to dip your toe in, the first part is pretty easy. Anybody can go to their local airport and learn to fly. It's not cheap, but it's not wildly expensive. I mean, there's definitely, all hobbies that can get expensive, but you can within 2 months go from nothing to a private pilot where you can rent a little airplane and take your family on sightseeing trips and or fly across the state or whatever. I mean, it's a pretty easy thing to get into. It's just like anything else, just got to go do it.
yeah,
But it's
absolutely.
very
Absolutely.
accessible. It really is. I mean, in flight schools, especially recently after all the COVID nonsense. I mean, the flight schools have popped up everywhere. And I mean, you would be hard pressed to find an airport that didn't have a flight school with a couple little airplanes and instructors and teaching people how to fly. I mean, they're everywhere now. It's really popular. So
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm in the Tampa area and I know you're in Tampa as well, but there's literally the Davis Island Airport. There's a few other airports
Oh,
around
yeah.
St. Pete. They're all over the place.
Yeah,
So
Clearwater, even Tampa has a couple of flight schools. Even the big airports have flight schools. I mean, they're everywhere. You pick an airport and there's a flight school there, guaranteed.
yeah, I just wanted to kind of get into that just because I know that the audience is going to be like, oh, this guy Bart got lucky. Like, there's no way. Like, I couldn't fly a plane. And you start to realize that you're like, yes, you can fly a plane. Like, you
Sure.
can do this. And that's why I wanted to bring Bart on because he's got an incredible story. It's super interesting. And like, it's going to show you a different path that's kind of unconventional. So at that time when you were going to college, were you just the unique guy who liked flying, or was flying like it is today, where it's just so
Yeah.
prevalent, people sit there traveling everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I was in when I went to college, I was in first of all, I had no idea like what I was going to do in aviation. I don't think anybody who first learns to fly in college and that everybody thinks they do, you know. I mean, I was in, I don't know how many, 100 other kids that were in the aviation program there at Ohio University, and everybody thought they knew what they want to do. Everybody talked about, I'm going to work for this airline, or I'm going to fly a, this corporate airplane, or I'm going to go work for this, Fortune 500 company and fly their executives around. Everybody thought they wanted to do, and boy, I'll bet probably none of them are doing exactly what they thought they were going to do in college. There's so many options in aviation between the military and corporate and commercial and private. I mean, it's just, there's so many things you can do in aviation, and you just kind of fall into, what you like to do once you learn, and you really, get all your ratings and you really understand, the aviation world. You just kind of start looking for jobs and you wind up finding one that you really enjoy. And if you enjoy it, I think you just kind of stick with it. And there's a lot of, that's sort of what happened to me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, most of the time we always think everything's a path, right? So it's one
Sure.
step, the next step, the next step. But actuality is you try one thing, you like it. You try another
Yeah.
thing, you don't like it. And you live and you learn and you grow from that each and every time, which I think is the most important lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I graduated college in 99 is when I graduated with an aviation degree, and just started sending out resumes. It wasn't as easy to get a job back then. Pilots, there was the airlines. I mean, you really, people weren't leaving college going straight to the airlines. I mean, they were going to other jobs, or they were if getting jobs as flight instructors and teaching for a couple of years and building that experience. There's a pretty huge shortage of pilots over the past bunch of years now, so that's really changed. But when I graduated college, you had to go, work somewhere for several years before you could even dream of applying at the airlines. I was an intern for United Airlines when I was in college, and I worked for them for a summer, and I was convinced. I mean, you could not tell me different that I was going to work for United Airlines at that time. It was a really great company to intern for. It still is. I love the company, but I was convinced that's where I was going to go. But it was going to be several years before I could go build the experience before they would even interview me, even as an intern with a sort of a priority foot in the door there. It was still going to be years. And in the meantime, I just found something else that I just fell in love with, and I really enjoyed completely by chance a little bit.
And
Just I was throwing my
yeah,
resume to anybody who'd talk to me.
absolutely. And why was that the commercial airlines were so sought after, or the holy grail at that point? Because I know most people look at it that way, and then you don't
Yeah.
realize that there's so many other options.
Yeah, that's sort of the brass ring, right? I mean, it's a it's a well-paying job, when it comes to pilots. You get for the most part, you get a schedule, so you know where you're going to be, when you're going to be doing it. The aviation is the one of the coolest things ever, but the downside is, there's a lot of travel, obviously, so you're gone a lot. So people that want to start a family and want to do those things, it can be difficult if you're gone 15, 20 days a month. And it's even harder sometimes if you don't know exactly when those days are going to be, at least if you have a set schedule and so that's why the airlines are such a popular thing. The schedule, everybody knows exactly where they're going to be and when they're going to be gone, and it's a well-paying job. So it's
The
sort of
consistency of
one
it
that
all.
everybody likes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the consistency. So
Yeah.
what ended up happening with you? Where did you go after that?
Well, I moved out I threw my resume to anybody who would even talk to me at the time. And I was looking for a flight instructor job. That's pretty much all I could get, graduating college with. I think I had 700 or 800 hours of flight time. I had my commercial multi-engine rating, and I was just looking for something. I was a flight instructor, and so a company in Colorado hired me. And I had always, in the summers, I was in the Boy Scouts, and in the summers I would always go to New Mexico and Colorado backpacking and hiking with the Boy Scouts. So I had been out west a lot, and I loved it out there. So I was kind of convinced after college I was going to move out west somewhere. And this company in Denver that was a flight school hired me, and I went out there and I taught at the flight school for a bit. I had a couple other side jobs. I flew, traffic watch. So I just flew around the city in a little Cessna with some reporters in the back talking about the traffic every morning and every afternoon. I mean, I would do anything, just to build some flight time and get some hours. And then I wanted to fly a jet. That's sort of the natural progression. Everybody wants to fly a bigger, faster airplane, right? So I found this company that was doing air ambulance, and went in and talked to them, gave them my resume, and they hired me. I knew nothing about it. I'd never flown a jet. I'd never flown air ambulance. I had zero medical knowledge. And I just said, oh, this sounds like a cool job. So I applied and got it. So,
Well, I think that's one of the most important things is that you put yourself out there without knowing the actual results.
yeah,
And because 90% of the stuff is learned on the fly. Like there's baseline education, but it's really the default skills of like, are you willing to learn? Yes. Okay.
yeah,
We can teach you.
that's it. Yeah. And then you have to, you know, in high school and college, they kind of spoon feed stuff to you, and maybe through college they start spoon feeding it a little bit less, and you have to go out and find it more yourself. And then all of a sudden, you graduate college, and it's like nobody's spoon feeding you anything like at all. Like no knowledge is being forced into you. If you don't go find it and you don't do it, then you're just not going to have it. And that's a big transition. I see that now with a lot of my employees. I hire a lot of new pilots, and it's kind of an awakening. Like, oh man, I got to be the one to open the book, and I got to read this, or nobody's going to tell me this. So yeah, and that's what I did. So when I moved to Colorado, I started flight instructing and just learning as much about aviation as I could. I got this job flying air ambulance for this company out of Denver, and if you'd asked me at the time, I'd have swore that I was going to do it for 2 or 3 years and then go work for United. But everything changed. 9/11 happened. That was
Absolutely.
a gigantic shift in aviation. I mean, so many companies out of business. The company I worked for at the time during 9/11 went out of business. And
Why was that? Like what occurred? I know obviously 9/11 happened.
yeah,
But what was the transition?
yeah, it shut everything down in the aviation industry there for a while. I mean, everything in aviation just sort of crashed. Wrong word, but yeah, I mean, it was a terrible time for aviation, right? I mean, it was so many companies were struggling. There wasn't as much travel going on, especially the international travel at that time.
A lot of people, I get it. A lot of people wanted to stay grounded where they were. They're like, I don't want to go to the sky. Like,
yeah, it's kind of like COVID. I mean, that shut a lot of international travel down, but with the exception of during 9/11, the government didn't step in and save all these companies. So a lot of them just went out of business. The company I work for went out of business, and they were a fantastic company. I mean, they were really a great company to work for. I really enjoyed working for them in the job, and they were great people. I mean, everything was good, and they went out of business, and the airline industry was, all of a sudden laid off, thousands of pilots. And, there was just all of a sudden the chance of working for an airline just got pushed back a bunch of years. All of a sudden, 10,000 plus pilots laid off and, looking for jobs and coming back and taking the jobs that I was having at the time. So it was really, really hard to find a job back then.
how did you feel in that moment? Because I could only imagine, like, you work so hard for something. And it's
I was convinced I wanted to work for an airline. So right after 9/11 happened, I started putting my resume out to places, and there was a small airline out of St. Pete, Southeast Airlines there. And they were just happened to be hiring. And I was lucky enough to get a job there. And I worked there for several months. I never actually even went to training on the actual airplane. I worked there for several months. I was waiting on a training slot and just working in that environment. And I rode around on the airplanes a lot and jump seated and tried to, learn the company and that, and realized real quick that this is not exciting. This is not for me. Flying back and forth from Orlando to Stewart, New York 9 times a week is not is not fun. I had been flying air ambulance all over the world. I was flying all over Europe, and drop of the hat, last minute, you get a phone call and drop everything. You're going to go to Thailand tomorrow. I mean, those the kind of flying I was doing, and that was what I liked, and that's what I enjoyed. Now all of a sudden I'm flying this, or working for this company that's flying these big DC-9s to New York and back, and I was like, no, this is not for me. So when that happened, I just said, hey, I got to look for another air ambulance company, because that's what I really enjoyed doing, and why do I want to stop doing that?
Absolutely. And what did you feel like with the travel? Like, because obviously you went from the flight instructor to sounded like you were based in Denver,
Sure.
to this experience of traveling whenever you
Right.
want, not intentionally knowing where you're going, but you're traveling a lot of locations.
Yeah, travel is a weird thing, right? Everybody thinks it's what they want to do. If you ask 100 people, do you want to go travel more? Like, yeah, I think 99 of them will say yes, I want to go travel, but most of them don't realize like what that entails, especially for work. As a pilot, I mean, it's everybody has asked me, I travel to these places, like, oh, you went to Thailand. What was it like? And I'm like, I was at the hotel. I was tired when I got there. I was tired when I had breakfast the next morning. I mean, it's not as glamorous as people think. And it's a lot of people think they like to travel. They think they'd be good at it. And very few people are actually really good at it, because it really takes a lot out of you. You got to be real tolerant of a lot of things. Everything in the world is so different in different places. So yeah, I mean, but I loved it. I mean, I literally fell in love with it. I could drop anything and pack a backpack and leave tomorrow for a month, and it wouldn't bother me a bit. I mean, I really, really fell in love with it and enjoyed the travel and enjoyed the last minute stuff. And I had done several different aviation jobs at that point. I mean, I had flight instructing. I had some buddies of mine that flew cargo through the mountains in Colorado at night, and I rode with them and did it. I mean, and you don't realize it, I guess, when you're younger, but you have to have something in the job that is somewhat rewarding, or else you're just going to get bored with it. And I had flown just passengers, and for the most part, you're kind of a bus driver. They don't really look at you don't really get any kind of like you've actually helped anybody. You just, flew somebody from point A to point B. You fly cargo, there's really no satisfaction in that, although it's fun flying and you really always enjoy the flying. But with air ambulance, for me anyway, I mean, you were picking up somebody's mother or somebody's brother who was hurt in some situation where they felt lost and they didn't know how to get out of that situation. Here you are, kind of the cavalry coming in, like, all right, I'll get you home, or we'll take care of you. And these are regular people. I mean, these are not rich people that just own private airplanes. I mean, these are regular everyday people that are just in bad situations and need some help. And you realize that as you get older, I guess, like how good that feels, and how that's somewhat rewarding as a job, which is a huge difference than a lot of the other type of flying out there. So that's why I fell in love with it. I mean, that's why I really enjoyed it. I still
Yeah.
do today.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. And that's one of the main reasons I made this podcast. Is for me, I got joy out of speaking to people and sharing their stories and hearing their stories and learning about all these different areas, because there's so many times that I was seeing it that people would just climb that corporate ladder, climb that corporate thing, and they just get stuck where it's
Yeah.
like they got kids, house, this, that, and they're like, yeah, I don't really love this. And
Yeah,
it's like,
sure. All wonderful things, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, what are you got to
and
have
then
that work-life balance, right? And if you don't enjoy the work part of it, you're not going to balance it right, I guess. So maybe that's
100%, because it's like, what's the point? Like, what's the point if we're not doing good things? And this is one of the reasons I wanted Bart on, because he's built an incredible life that he loves. And
yeah,
like, you want to be around people and you could feel that, and it's infectious, because a majority of the time people don't love their life. They're
right.
like,
Yeah.
Monday,
Yeah.
not Monday.
Yeah.
So how do you think, so you get this job and then you realize you get this job at the airport, you realize you don't like it.
Yeah.
What do you end up doing? Like,
Well, they did it for me. They were before I could even go to class and learn to fly, the actual airplane side. I did the ground portion of it and learn the company side of it before I could actually go to the simulator and learn the airplane. They were already starting to lay people off. They were overhire. The airlines are very notorious for overhiring and then laying off, and then overhiring and then laying off. It's very common. I think you're going to see it happening here in the next year or two, but right now. But they hired too many people, and before I could even get a slot in the simulator, they were announced they were laying people off, and I was dead last seniority at the time. There was 90 some pilots in the company, and I was number 90 something. I was the last
yeah.
guy. I knew I was the number one to be laid off. And I really already had realized that it wasn't something that really excited me, and I didn't want to do it. So there was another air ambulance company that was starting up in Clearwater, and I got wind of them, and they heard of me, and we ended up finding each other, and I went to work for them, and I did that for a year or so, and they were not a good company. They were the management, the structure not there were not what I was used to. I was used to working for a very professional, very good company, and now all of a sudden this was, and I had no idea that they weren't all like that. I just assume everybody's like that, and found out very quickly that they're not, and it was a terrible company. So I worked there for a year or so and said, boy, I could do this better myself. Why am I working for somebody else? I could just start my own company and run it the way I want to run it, and I think I could do it better. And so my arrogance kicked in, and I said, I'm just going to go do it. And so I did. I started. That was in 2003.
That's incredible. And what was the thought process there with realizing the business components? Because obviously you got the training in the flight school, but the
Sure.
training in the business, we all know, is a different animal. Like, how did you even go about that? Because I feel like that would be
Yeah.
the intimidating portion.
Yeah, it is ignorance is bliss, I guess. Maybe,
Yes.
and when I went to college for aviation, you take a lot of aviation classes, but then you have you got to find something to fill the other classes in the time, and I was just took a bunch, as many classes as I could, and so I had taken some business classes and accounting and stuff like that, but I don't know if I knew anything, to be honest with you. I don't know what I learned from it, but so when I started my business in 2003, I was pretty clueless, to be honest with you. I knew the airplane side of it, and I knew how to operate the airplane and fly the airplane, and I was the pilot, I was the owner, I was the pilot. I had a business partner, and he was the other pilot. And it was just the two of us, and we talked a guy into leasing us an airplane with very little money we had, and we just said, let's give it a go. I mean, well, everybody else is losing their job in aviation right now. What's the worst that could happen? Is we could go out and do this and fail and lose our job. We'd probably lose our job working for any other company that we'd work for, so what's it matter? So
So
yeah, we just didn't
that,
know, and
that
learned really
that's a
fast.
huge point that Bart just brought up right there, is because most people don't realize that their job that's one source of income.
Mm-hmm.
But if you build the business, you could have 10 sources, because different
Yeah,
insurance companies, different people, people want to help you with it. Different ones want to guide you. And like, there's a lot of different ways to make money with that. And I think it was intelligent. And also the other start at the beginning is what most people don't realize is that you are the employee, the manager, and the owner. And you have
yep,
to wear all three hats.
do it
Those
all.
hats do not distinguish themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the hardest part is just starting. I mean, you just got to do it. You just got to start. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I literally in 2003 probably sat down on my computer and Googled, how to start a business. I mean, I didn't know, and just follow some instructions and start doing it. And, I've done failed in a lot of things, and things you don't know about, with HR and payroll and taxes, and you think you're doing the right thing. I don't think anybody ever really intentionally, screws up, but you do, and you make a mistake, and then somebody comes in and says, hey, you're not doing this right, and you learn the hard way and go, oh crap, like that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and then you kind of feel stupid for a minute. It's like, why did I know that, like how did I, and but whatever. I mean, you fix it and you move on, and it's just sort of a natural process, I guess. That's what happens.
Well, that's a huge lesson in its own capacity of not being so hard on yourself, not being like, I'm an idiot, I'm so
Yeah.
stupid, I can't do this.
Right.
Because in reality, you just have to sit there and think, in that moment, did I know that the taxes were due? Did I
Sure.
know that the IRS, like, I didn't know any of this. So how could I know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't know. I mean, I didn't know half the stuff. I mean, I thought I was doing it correctly. I even had at one point I had like a payroll company doing it. And I thought, well, that clearly this is perfect, and but there's those other things you just don't know, and you don't realize you're supposed to be doing, and then I mean, nothing's anything you get. There's no anything you get in trouble for that's not recoverable. I mean, you just kind of figure it out and go, oh man, I was supposed to be doing that, and you fix it and move on. But yeah, I use that as one example. There's all kinds of those things in business that you don't realize. You don't
There's no
know.
way. There's no way to know everything. There's too much
Right.
stuff going on. It's
Oh
going
yeah,
100 different
still
directions.
to this day, we make mistakes and figure out, oh man, we should have done it this way, and it is what it is. But you're right. I mean, it's there's so many options once you have your own business. There's so many different things you can do, and you don't even realize that. You started up thinking you're going to do one thing, and then a couple of years in, you're like, boy, I can do this. Like now that I have this, infrastructure built, I'm capable of this, and things just happen that you didn't even realize were going to be options at the time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the coolest things is building out the asset and you go, who knew? Who
Yeah.
knew that we could do this? Like,
Right.
this is incredible. Like, I didn't expect for things to go these kind of ways. And what are some of these pivots that you had? And I'm also interested when you started in 2003, how do you think about picking a partner? Because that can be a challenging in its own capacity.
Yeah, it's tough. I didn't know anything at the time, again, about a partner. I was flying with a guy who was a good friend of mine, and he was a great guy to be buddies with at the time. And we started the business together, and we knew nothing. So we started up 50-50, and so we're thinking like, oh, we'll work everything out, right? We'll be and we just had very different ideas of where it was going to go. We had very different ideas of who we should hire as employees and the type of resumes we should look at, and how we should treat them and how we should pay them. We just had very different views, and nobody sits down at that age anyway. I mean, I was 20. It was 2003. Was I 26 years old, 25 years old, something like that? I mean, nobody sits down. Nobody at that time sits down and never having run a business before looks at a
You don't
partner
know.
and says, hey, do we have the same attitude on training? Do we have the same attitude on what? You just don't think about that. You just, we were buddies and thought, well, we like doing stuff together, so let's run this business together. But ultimately, we ran it for 6 years together, and you grew further and further and further apart in our ideas of where we wanted to take it and what we wanted to do. And just attitude in general of how we were going to do things and what the future was. So I kind of had an epiphany in like 2008 or nine, at the end of early 2009, and said, I went to him and said, either you buy me or I'll buy you, but one of us is going to take this in their direction, and maybe neither one of them are wrong. Well, mine's maybe not better than yours, but it's what I want, and yours is different than mine. So I ended up selling my half of the company to him in 2009, and then not knowing again what I wanted to do. I was like, okay, maybe now's the time I go to the airlines. Maybe things are better. And but I really liked air ambulance, and I had a lot of people, employees that I had at the time that were sort of telling me like, hey, you really should just start another company. Like, you really like this, and you're really good at it. And, you just go start another one and run it your way. And so I did. And at the time, my mom was running her own business as a consulting company doing HR and payroll consulting. So I went to her and said, hey, do you want to start this thing together? And you can do the sort of the HR and the payroll side of it in the beginning, and I'll do the airplane side of it, and we'll start this. And it's sort of evolved into what it is today. So yeah, so my mom and I started this new company. So again, I didn't sit down as a partner and go, hey, what's your attitude on this? But she's my mother, what do you
What do you
so
expect? No,
yeah,
but it's kind of that trust area of like, I think we have alignment on this. But the other major thing that I think on the second one that was really important that the audience can take away is Bart got somebody, even though it's his mom, that had a completely different skill set from
yeah,
Bart, which
yeah,
is huge. Because
yeah, absolutely. And that's
when you both have the same skill set, it doesn't
yeah, and
provide
that's
a
a huge
benefit.
piece of it. If you take two people, I guess, and I never really put, I guess, a lot of thought into it, but you bring up a good point. If you take two people that have the exact same skill set, eventually they're probably going to have a little bit different ways they want to do that, right? Whereas my mom, she's not a pilot, she's not in aviation, or was not in aviation before, other than through me. So I run the aviation side of this, and her skill set is the payroll, and she's sort of evolved into running managing the medical side of our company as far as the employees and that go, and she's really really good at it. So she runs that, which is really good. It's something that I can do, I'm capable of, but it's definitely not as big of a passion as the airplanes for me. So it lets me really put so much time and effort into the airplane side of it that I love, and the pilot training and the hiring and that, and lets her do the other side of it, and it works out incredibly well. Actually, it works really well. So
Yeah, definitely. And what was the thought behind when you started the second business? Were you worried about like stealing customer, like how not stealing
no,
customer, like how did that work with like marketing, or you're
yeah,
just like onto a new business? Like how did that go?
I sold my old company. I sold half of it, and we negotiated for months, and ultimately negotiated down to where I pretty much gave away. I mean, I had very very little money out of it. Pennies on the dollar, probably what the value it would have had at
Worth.
the time. Looking
Yeah.
back at it, but I didn't have a non-compete, and it allowed me to basically leave
Start
and
again.
do anything else I wanted to do. So and I didn't really know. I didn't really leave thinking. I honestly I don't didn't think I was going to start another air ambulance company when we were negotiating and selling. And then all of a sudden, when I had a because I just figured I'd have a non-compete agreement, and I would do something else in aviation. And there's plenty of other opportunities. So but then at the end, we settled for a lot lower price and got rid of the non-compete. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. Why not just start another air ambulance company? Like I can do this and just do it all over again. And my goal, from the beginning, I'm not even sure if I knew it was my goal, but I know what I wanted was to start the company, build it up for, 7, 8, 10 years or whatever it took, and then sell it. And try to sell it and make some money off of it, but at the same time be a part of it and sell it to somebody else that can maybe take it, to the next step or the next level, and grow with it, as that side. And my partner at the time didn't want to do that, so that was a big contention. And that's what I wanted with this company. And my mom and I discussed that right from the beginning. We sort of laid out a plan and said, this is what we could do in 10 years. This is what I think we could. I built this other one in 6 years. So, now I kind of have the roadmap and I know what I want to do. And so I started the company, and like I said, I didn't have a non-compete. So I just called a lot of my old customers and said, hey, I'm starting this new company, and if you want to give us a shot, I'd appreciate it. And that's what we did. And we still have those customers today. So,
Which is awesome. And
yeah,
how did you, because also for everyone listening, a business to sell versus a business just to have another job are very, very different. Like
yeah,
there's different skill sets that need to be entailed. Like Bart can't be the only guy in a business to sell. Like,
yeah. You gotta find a way to work. You got to find a way to work on your business, not just in your business, right? I mean, you hear that a lot from people, and I'm still in it pretty deep, but but if you to start a business with any intention to sell, it's real easy to get business and personal finances mixed, especially with small businesses. You have a company credit card, and you buy hockey tickets with it, and you try to say that it's a marketing thing. It's very easy to mix that up in the beginning. You got to be but we knew we were going to sell, so we were very very cautious and very concerned about the books and making sure everything that was on the books was absolutely perfect, and make sure everything that you do is on the books, right? I mean, that's a big thing for small businesses. So it sounds, nobody is. I don't think anybody is nefarious or trying to cheat the system per se, but things just happen. And then when you go to sell the business later, it's a little bit harder to prove, like, hey, this is what I'm really doing. It's like, yeah, but why doesn't it show that? So we were very cautious from day one to make sure everything we did was on the books, and everything was business, and there was no personal stuff involved. And so when we went to sell, we had financials that we could really say, hey, this is what the business really is.
and was there any tips or tricks you utilized to keep it super separate? Because I know that can be confusing.
Yeah, I don't know that there was if
Because
I can't think of
because
anything,
one
but
of the ways I'll just let you know, like one of the ways I do it is basically you have the business bank account,
sure.
obviously,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and then I just have like business credit cards that are completely like but I also have personal credit cards, and you don't
Yeah.
mix the two in
Absolutely.
regard to, yeah.
That's key. I mean, you have to do that. No doubt about it. And you have to, stay on top of it and make sure every little penny is accounted for, and, find some sort of accounting software that you like, that you're going to stick with, and you're going to, reconcile every month, like clockwork. And yeah, I mean, you have to do that. But yeah, you got to keep it separate. You got to have a business credit card that's just for business, and everything is, documented and very
Yeah.
clear. You
And then how did you and I'm pretty sure most people are curious about this, but how do you even grow? Like, who are your customers at that point? Like, obviously you
Yeah,
have, because you said there are regular people who are in tough times. It's
sure.
hard to target regular people in tough times. Like,
Yeah. Most of them are, most of our customers anyway are either insurance companies, or brokers in the business that are advertising, case managers at hospitals, stuff like that, that are sort of in the, uh, talking to the families and talking to the patients, because our business, I don't know if I really got into it, but our business essentially is people go on vacation, or they go traveling for whatever reason. They're displaced from where they live, and they wind up either having an accident, or they wind up having some sort of medical condition that crops up, and they wind up in a hospital. And now they're in a hospital and they can't go get on an airline and fly home. They're to the point where it's not possible to be on an airline. They're in a hospital bed, or they have an injury, or they have something. And the only way to get home is to either recover where they're at, and get to the point where they can go get on an airliner and come home, or have us come get them. And we, have a private airplane with a nurse and a medic in the back, and a full set of ambulance, hospital equipment, and, take care of that patient. We have a stretcher in the back for the patient to lay on. We're basically like a ground ambulance that is in the air. It's the same thing. So, we fly over privately and we transport them back, and it can be wildly expensive depending on where they're, we fly everywhere in the world. So there's nowhere on earth really that you can get sick or injured that we can't come get you and bring you home, with a few exceptions. But for the most part, people like that's what happens. So when they either, and Americans were terrible at insurance, right? So everywhere else in the world, the Europeans and that, when they travel, it's just natural for them to buy some sort of travel insurance and to insure their trip. And people in the U.S., you don't think about that. You don't think about, you're just like, I'm going to go to, we were just talking, before we started this, we are talking about traveling to Europe and then going to Rome. You don't think about it. It's like, I'm just going to go to Rome. I'm going to hang out for a week or two or a month, and I'm going to come home. But you don't think about if you trip in the middle of the street and get hit by a car, or, you'd fall down a set of stairs. There's a lot less safeguards around things outside the U.S. We like to bubble wrap everything here. So, the stairs that are slippery don't get fixed in Rome. I mean, they just,
I remember a time when I was studying abroad, and I went to Croatia, and I was on this excursion, and the excursion was it was called canyoning. And it's basically like you wear a wetsuit and you have this hat on and you're doing this
Yeah,
whole thing. And the lady goes and she's like, lost the key. I'm like, okay, so now what? She literally lifts up the fence and she's like, go underneath. And I'm
yeah,
like, and we didn't sign any waivers or anything.
yeah.
I'm like,
No.
this place is crazy.
Yeah, but and that's, accidents happen, then and that's what happens. And then we fly a lot of people like that. But a lot of group trips and that are insured, but it's just the private. And
That travel insurance, like I've gone on a couple trips to like Thailand, Israel, all these different places. That travel insurance, literally for a week, is very, very cheap. Like,
yeah, super cheap. I mean, for
comparison to what it gets you.
considering what it would cost to call me to come get you, it's unbelievably cheap. I mean, it can be well into the over $100,000 range to to come get somebody in Europe and bring it back to the U.S. I mean, that's a pretty normal, easily can cost that. Whereas a couple $100 for some insurance that would cover it. And the other thing you think about, I mean, you're fortunate at your age to be able to travel and do those things, but most people don't. Most people wind up finally having the money and the availability and that to travel when they're older. They're now all of a sudden, hey, I'm 65. I can now go on a cruise through the Caribbean or through the Mediterranean, and the health isn't as good, and they wind up going on these excursions and doing things that they wouldn't normally do at home, and eating more and drinking more and staying up later and not, out of their routine. And that's when medical problems occur, so now all of a sudden when they're old. So it's the older population a lot of times that have the ability to travel and the money to do these kind of things, and don't think about the insurance, or they have health insurance in the US and they just assume like, oh,
That it covers.
my health insurance will cover me if I get hurt in Rome. Well, you probably won't. So
I actually remember last year I was in Portugal, and we went up the stairs. It was like one of these 5 flights up or something. Like it was like a 50-story stair thing. But if you took the elevator all the way up, you still had to go up like another 3 flights. Guy's 70 years old. We're at the rooftop and he is just on the ground. And I'm like, how did this even happen? And he's like, oh, the altitude. Like,
sure,
dude, I don't know. I'm like, someone help this man, please. But so for the audience, please get insurance if you travel.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, no doubt. One of our biggest customers is one of the best companies I work for, is a company called Learjet Assist, and they're out of Birmingham, Alabama. And you can literally buy a year-long membership for hundreds of dollars. I mean, it's cheap, and it'll cover you anywhere in the world for the most part, with some exceptions. But if you're more than 150 miles or so away from your home and you get hurt, they'll call me and I come get you and take you home, and you don't pay a dime. And you just have a membership to this thing. I'm a member myself. My parents are members. It's on my list here. I wrote it down before we started talking to send you the information. Like, hey, if you're going to go on a trip, like you need to be a member of this company.
Absolutely. Cheap, absolutely. We can put that in the show notes. And it kind of got me thinking, because I know every single trip, everyone's always, whenever you get like a big group, you're like, oh, I hope no one gets hurt and we got to jet out of here, because you don't realize it, because Bart's the guy coming to get you most of the time.
I fly. I give you an example, which is an interesting story. We had a woman who was, she wasn't elderly or anything. I mean, I want to say she was in her 60s, great health, nothing wrong with her. And her husband had passed away. So she's now a widow, and she joins this club of other widows, and they decide they're going to take a trip, and they want to do this safari in Tanzania or something. Just a wild trip, something that she'd never done. So she does, and she plans this trip. Well, she was a member of Learjet Assist, and so she went on this trip, and they were on a safari bus, and they had stopped, and she went to step off the bus and just stepped wrong and twisted her ankle, fell down, and fell on a rock and broke her hip. Complete accident. I mean, healthy woman, nothing wrong with her, nothing, whatever. And she just took a wrong step in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, it was several $100,000 to bring her home. And Learjet called us and just said, how fast can you go get this woman and bring her back? I forget where we even took her back in the US, but how fast can you get her back to the US? And within 48 hours, we were, in Northern Africa and working with another company that flew into the little dirt runway or wherever where she was at and brought her to us. And we ended up bringing her back to the United States within, 3 days. And she had a membership that probably cost her $200-300, So
the value is just
it's unbelievable. And on the other side of that coin, I have flown people out of Europe that are refinancing their house and calling, their 4 or 5 kids to put, how much money do you have on your credit card to get, grandma home because she got, hurt on a cruise ship in Greece or something. So if you don't think about it, and you're just stuck. So I've seen both sides of that coin. I mean, and obviously being prepared is better, but
honestly sounds like a good gift to anyone.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I pass it on to everybody. Everybody talks to me. They tell me they're going on a cruise or they're going to travel. I'm like, what if something happens to you? How are you going to get home?
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm young and healthy, and
you're like, I do this for a living. Most people think that they're young and healthy. Trust me, the business is doing well.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not doing it on people who are healthy. So it's a great thing, and that's our customers. I mean, to kind of get back to that, they're the insurance companies who ultimately provide this type coverage, or brokers who advertise on the internet, or hospitals that Yeah, we fly a lot of people also that hospitals pay for. You wouldn't
Okay.
sort of something that people wouldn't think about, but we have, and it's obviously going to be a bigger problem going forward. But you have people who are illegal immigrants in the country. If they get hurt or they get sick, and something happens to them, and they wind up in a hospital, if they don't have any family here, and and they get to be where they're in the hospital and they're stuck in that hospital for a long time, they could wind up in the ICU of a hospital who might only have a dozen ICU beds. And here's a person with no insurance, no nothing. And the hospital is not going to get compensated in any way for taking care of this person. And if they're stuck there for months, it might be cheaper just for the hospital to pay whatever it would cost to fly them back to their own country, and let them get healthcare back, at their own country. So you see that a lot. We fly a lot of indigent people that are in hospitals, and the hospitals saying, they're taking up one of our resources here that we're not able to, it's a business and we're not able to get any compensation for that. So sometimes the hospital will just pay us directly to
loss
to fly them
Wow.
home.
That's interesting. Yeah. And what was the thought when you first started? Because I believe you have 6 jets at this point. And what are these jets?
So they're all Learjets. It's sort of it's sort of the workhorse in the air ambulance industry. It's for the money they cost and what they cost to operate, they're the best airplane for the mission. And so we have 6 Learjets. We're a little different. I specialize in the long distance transports. So a lot of air ambulance companies may operate a different type of airplane or a shorter range airplane, and they specialize in just one area of the country. And we really specialize in worldwide. So we'll fly to South Africa, pick somebody up and bring them back. We can really fly anywhere in the world. So we specialize in these long range airplanes. So they made the Lear 35, which is sort of the most popular, Learjet. They built almost 700 of them. And they took that airplane and they made a very specific variant of that airplane with a larger fuel tank in it. And they called it a Lear 36. And they only built, 60 of them. So they didn't build a ton of them. But they're the most popular airplane for me. And we have 4 of those that we operate internationally. We operate those all over the world. And they have about a 6-hour range. So one stop out of Florida, we can make one stop and get to Europe. We can, 2 stops we can get from Eastern Europe to Western United States. So we can operate those and they have the range to go across the Pacific and to go, down far South America. So that's the reason we operate that specific airplane.
That's cool. And I bet you people are wondering, how does the whole financing of that work? Like, is there do you buy them used? Like, do you buy them brand new? How does it
just like
work?
any other,
Like, what's the price and how's it all that?
I mean, an average Learjet for the ones we operate are anywhere between 1.5 million probably to buy the airplane, and you can finance it. You can make payments every month. We've been fortunate. We leased our first couple airplanes. We leased. And the guy that I leased it from became a very, very good friend of mine. And ultimately, we ended up buying the airplanes at the end of the lease from him. But and now, we're in a position where if we wanted to add another airplane tomorrow, we would, we'd either pay cash or we would finance it, depending on right now rates are not great. So, but we have several financed right now. So I mean, there's a bunch of different options out there, and so yeah, that's in airplanes require a lot of upgrades and maintenance. I mean, it's nothing to own an airplane for 4 or 5 years and then have to put $400,000 or $500,000 back into it with paint and engines and interior. I mean, these are assets that last a long time, so they really can take they're pretty heavy maintenance wise and expense wise.
Absolutely.
But, we have as far as the business side of it, we have separate accounts that we keep, literally.
Oh, for each one?
Yeah. Each one. So not necessarily for each one, but sometimes we have a bank account for our engines where we just put money in every month. And then when our engines come due, we're guaranteed we have the money to do that.
That's smart.
And I'm sure that applies to a lot of other businesses that I just don't know about. But I mean, as far as aviation businesses go, some of these trips are very expensive, right? So we can do $150,000, $200,000 trip that the bulk of the money we're taking in, we need to save for future maintenance of that airplane. Some of it is immediate costs, fuel and pilots and payroll and all those kind of things. But some of that's the engine, and the engine might not be due for overhaul for another 3 years, but it's going to be $400,000 when it is due. And if you're not saving for that and planning for that, if you're using that money to do something else right now, when that bill comes due, you can, and that happens a lot in aviation. You see that a lot. So I've always been very disciplined as far as, we have separate bank accounts. We put that money in those bank accounts. That's not money that we look at as available to us to use for operations or payroll. I mean, that's money that we know we're going to have to use later. And then when those things come due, we're able to have a good relationship with the shop and with the engine shop and with the maintenance shop, that because they know that, we have the money set aside to do that, and we could do the work. And when it's done, we pay it in full. And, that works really well for us. And those relationships that we're able to build with those suppliers are invaluable.
Yeah. And I mean, you might be sitting there listening, going, how is that relevant to me? It's relevant because things like engines could be your AC going out. That could be you losing your job. That could be anything, where it's just good to put money away and not spend every single dollar. Because when you spend every single dollar, then you leave yourself exposed to much bigger issues.
Yeah, and you talk about growth, how do you grow? How do you get bigger? Well, you buy more stuff, you invest in the company. So at the end of the year, if you've made money that year, what are you going to do with that money? You're going to take it out and just put it in your savings account, or you're going to reinvest it in the company. And you got to figure out, how much do I want to put back into this company and grow it? You see a lot of companies that every year, they made money. They did really well. Maybe we made $1 million this year. But you wind up taking that money and putting it right back into buying another asset or another whatever, or increasing payroll or something. You put that money right back in the company, and you can go 10 years in business and go, man, I've made millions of dollars, but I don't have millions of dollars in my pocket, but you have this asset, so now you have this functioning asset that can, that makes money. And now what is that worth? So you just got to there's a lot to it. I know, we grew this company, and then, man, in the first couple of years, I mean, it was sometimes we weren't even able to pay ourselves. It was like, all right, we're going to have to sacrifice this to do this. But that's the way you grow it. You got to put the money back into the company.
And I'm glad you're sharing that, because there's probably a lot of people listening going, this guy's got 6 jets, and like
Right.
he's choosing between whether this or that. Like, yes, we all have to make choices, and there's all sacrifices that go on, and it's not always as glamorous. It's never as glamorous as people are like, must be easy, like must be nice. Because if you're running if you're running 6, I just want to bring this up. If you're running 6 jets, like, how many trips do you have to take? That means they got to be moving constantly.
Oh yeah, we did. We move. I did a number the other day. I thought this was a really interesting number for us. We just had this conversation. We started in like December of 2009 is when we flew our first flight. And we started with one airplane, and then when we made some money, we bought a second, and grew and grew and grew. And if you add up the amount of flight time, I think we've flown coming up on like 40,000 flight hours as a company. And if you divide that out by the number of days since we started in 2009, we average about 7 hours of flight time a day. So every day, on average, some days we fly 20 and 30 hours a day between all of our airplanes, and some days we don't fly at all. But we average about 7 hours a day, which is a lot of flying, for a small company like ours. Anyway.
And that's over 13 years.
Right.
14 years. That's very, very. So that just proves that it's consistency of coming up every single day, because a lot of people, oh, you suddenly made it, Bart. No.
We fly a bunch. I mean, we flew 4 or 5 patients, I think, on Tuesday. We flew 4 yesterday. We're flying 4 today. We move patients every day. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And there's some economies of scale, right? So when we started with one airplane, you can just do one trip, and when that trip's over, wherever you're at, that's where you're available the next day. Now we have 5 or 6 airplanes, so we have things moving around. I have an airplane today that's on its way to San Francisco. I have another one on the way to New York today. And when I get a call for a patient out of Cleveland that wants to go somewhere, I can go, well, I have one on the way to New York right now. I'll just hop them to Cleveland tomorrow and use them. and you can offer a little bit better price, but still a good price for me. So, once you start being able to combine these things and really putting this thing together, I mean, it's no different than the truck driver that picks up oranges in Florida and takes them to Idaho and picks up potatoes and brings them back, right? I mean, when you can combine these things and put them together, when you start having the infrastructure to do that, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's really good really fast. So
Yeah. And most people don't realize that with like the W-2 life. With W-2, it's like you did your
mhm.
work, you got paid, you move on. With the
Yeah,
business owner, you can start playing with the different assets and
yeah,
adjusting them and changing things. And maybe we could do this. And if that flight from Florida to Cleveland was regularly 10 grand, now it
sure,
might be like you can get
sure.
you can get them at the lowest price for
Yeah, I do
five
it all.
grand, and they don't know. Like it
Yeah, I
doesn't
do
matter.
it all the time. I mean, none of our competitors can do it for any less than this. So I can charge just a little bit less than that, still be advantageous to everybody, and we can do better. So and then that gives us the option to, every now and then we run into somebody who needs to go somewhere that doesn't have the money to do it, or doesn't have as much, and we can say, oh well, we can combine you with this, and this trip is already getting paid this much money, so we can combine you and do this for a lot cheaper, maybe to help somebody out or something. So there's a lot of options there. I mean, we do that all the time. We combine things to help people. So
That's incredible. Because that brings into the community service aspect and the charity and like giving
sure,
back, because there's so many people that like when you do have enough and you can support, it's not always, hey, the payment's not always the payment. Sometimes it's like, we just got to make this work. You know what I
sure,
mean?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't have a choice sometimes. You're put in a. We've done several where we've put in a position where we have the airplane, we're in position, we're ready to do it. COVID was a big part of it. That was a lot.
How
COVID.
how was that for you regarding, because you're worldwide, like were
Yeah,
you able to still be worldwide, or like how did that even work?
we were capable in some aspects, but there was no international travel. The people weren't there. The American population was not traveling in Europe. The European population was not traveling in the United States. Even simple stuff. The Canadians were not traveling to Florida. Canadians have government health insurance. And so if they're in Canada and they get sick or injured, they just go to a hospital and it's paid for, right? But if they're traveling, so many, here in Florida, I mean, how many snowbirds are here in Florida? How many Canadians are here in the wintertime right now? I mean, it's crazy. But if the way it sort of works in Canada from a very simplistic view is, if a Canadian is here in Florida and they get sick or they get injured and they wind up in a hospital, the Canadian health insurance system will pay for anything that's emergent or diagnostic. So somebody has a heart attack at their home in Fort Myers, the ambulance to pick them up and take them to the hospital will be paid for. Any emergent intervention will be paid for. Any diagnostic, like, hey, you've had this, and will be paid for. But once it hits that treatment phase, okay, now you need heart bypass or you need, something done. That's no longer paid for now. So now they're sort of on their own. And the way Canadians do it is a lot of times they'll buy their own specific health insurance policy through a Canadian company that will pay for that additional that the government, to sort of make up for what the government won't pay for when they're down there. And receiving treatment at a hospital in, say, Fort Myers can be expensive, right? I mean, and it may be cheaper for that insurance company just to call me and say, hey, for $25,000, can you just fly them back to Toronto, and get
Yeah.
them in a Canadian hospital where we can have treatment there. And now we don't have to pay for the treatment in Florida. So we fly a ton of snowbirds from Florida that are injured for those Canadian insurance companies, that it's cheaper to pay them, fly them home and get healthcare there than it is to pay for the healthcare here in Florida. So we do that a lot. Well, all of a sudden COVID happened and now they're not allowed to be here and they're not traveling. And there's a huge part of our business that's just gone.
Yeah.
So, we pivoted a little bit and we started flying a lot of domestic flights that we hadn't done before. We started flying more and more organ transport flights around the US, people that needed organs or organ transport teams, so it was still a huge hit to our business. So we started pivoting to do more of that. Well, now COVID's kind of over and now we're back to doing what we do, but we're still doing the stuff that we
Bold.
did do during COVID. So it's a growth thing for us. So we're busier now than we ever were, sort of because of that, even though it was a huge hit at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you
Which,
just got to make the best of
but
it and try
I
to.
think that's something that a lot of us don't look at. You look at so I mean, people can look at one or two ways, right? There's a challenge, and you could say yes, I'm open to the opportunity, or you could be like bend and be like, no, like we're not going to make
Yeah.
it. But obviously, you guys were open to it, and you're like,
Yeah.
how are we going to make this work? Like
Yeah, that's the hard part. I mean, as a business owner, you don't have a choice. I mean, you got 30 or 40 people that,
rely on you.
you got to pay them. Their paycheck is what's, getting them, paying their bills. So it's like, okay, we got to figure something out here, one way or another. I mean, we're fortunate. We're pretty lean company. We're pretty frugal. I mean, we keep quite a bit of money in savings for things like that. And during COVID, although we hated every second of it, it sucked. I mean, we were never in a bad financial position.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
we had to dig into money that we never thought we would have to use, but we did. So it worked. But
100%. And for you, how do you think about, because earlier in the podcast you mentioned that you went to another medical company and you're like they just weren't run well. So what do
yeah,
you think is some of the intangibles that some people might find that you do well that could carry into their lives? Like what are some of the things that you're doing a little
yeah. I mean,
different?
for me, for that situation anyway, a big piece of that was the maintenance of the airplane. You know,
Okay.
the first company I worked for was very open. I mean, as an employee, you could just go to the people who ran the company and go, "Hey, you need to do this. Like this airplane needs this or whatever," and they would do it. You felt heard, I guess. You felt like what you said needed to happen would happen. And then the other company that I had, the company that I worked for, they could care less. Stuff could be broken, and they could say, "Tough, go do it." And so as a business owner, you got to have a good system where the people can bring ideas and you can say, hey, we're going to implement this or we're going to try this. And it doesn't always work. We get because a lot of employees think like, why don't they just do this? Why don't you? And it sounds really simple, but it's not, but sometimes, so you have to have a system where you can show them, yeah, okay, we're going to implement this. We're making this change and we're going to try to do this, or have a really good explanation of, hey, look, we've tried this before. This is why it doesn't work. This is why we're not doing this. But if you don't have something where they can say, hey, this needs to happen, and they feel like it gets ignored, then you're never gonna, you know, and it's hard. You can't listen to everything, right? I mean, there's so many, you drive yourself crazy trying to fix every little thing that everybody thinks that you could do better. But you got to find the big things and make it seem,
And
better.
appreciate the feedback loop
Yeah,
instead of
absolutely.
being like, no, we like, and it's the way people talk about it. And it's that being heard, I think, is a massive lesson.
Sure.
Um, so prior to the podcast, we were talking about your incredible flight coming up around the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
Tell us
This
a
is
little more about
exciting.
this.
Yeah, so this is exciting. This is something that I've thought about for a long time, and I love when things kind of come together for a good reason and they sort of all make sense. And this one just really makes sense to me, and it's something I'm really excited about. So I read a book called The First World Flight, and it was written by a guy that sort of was a journalist that wrote about the first circumnavigation of the Earth by airplane, by a fixed wing airplane. So in the 1920s, there was sort of a race for which country could get a team of people in an airplane and fly all the way around the world. And aviation was young. I mean, it was, we just started flying in like 1903, right? So we're less than 20 years into this thing, and the British were trying it, the French were trying it, and nobody had really been successful at it yet. So the U.S. Army Air Corps at the time was tasked by the government to put together a team of airplanes and a team of guys to fly around the world. And they did it out of Seattle, and they started their journey. Their very first day of flying out of Seattle was April 6th of 1924. April 6th just happens to be my birthday. So I'm reading this book. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. They started on my birthday, 1924. And then I'm like, 1924, that we're coming up on 2024. It's going to be 100 years. So my birthday this year is going to be the 100-year anniversary of this first flight around the world. And they were successful. It took them, 100 and some 75 days or something.
Oh, wow.
took them a long time to get around the earth. They were very old, slow airplanes, and wasn't as many airports and runways, and the infrastructure wasn't there. So it was amazing what they did. But here I am. I'm going, man. I've flown around the world several times. For work. Taking a patient here, and then the next patient just happens to be further west or further east, and you just end up going around the world. I think, man, I've done it a couple times, and although it's an incredible thing, it was easy. I mean, I didn't even think about it at the time. And here are these guys. I'm reading this book, that are doing this in the 1920s. So I got this idea. I'm like, boy, why don't I put together a trip with one of my airplanes and we could try to fly around the world? So I started researching the speed records out there and who's done this in the past and what is the record. And I thought, so I looked up the westbound record, flying westbound around the world. I'm like, boy, we could do that. We could set that record. And so then I got hooked up with some guys that used to work, ex-employees and current employees of Bombardier and Learjet, who have put this project together called the Classic Learjet Foundation. And they actually went out and found the very first Lear 23 that was ever sold to the public. Serial number 3 was a hand-built airplane built in the early 60s. And they found this airplane over in Bartow, Florida, and they put together an organization to purchase this airplane, disassemble it, take it back to Wichita, reassemble it into like a flying museum piece, and like the old B-17s and stuff you see at air shows. So I got hooked up with these guys and I helped them disassemble this airplane and get it back to Wichita. We're now in the process of raising money to refurbish this airplane and put it back in flying condition, which I would love to do. And I'd love to be able to fly and ride on one of these days. So I came up with this idea, boy, I could do this flight around the world. I could set this record. It could be on my birthday. It could be the 100-year anniversary, and it could be, we could do it as a fundraiser to raise money to refurbish this airplane. So that's where we're at. So we're doing this flight. I'm going to leave Wichita in one of my airplanes on April the 4th, and we're going to fly westbound around the world. We're going to land back in Wichita on April 6th, which is my birthday. And it's also going to be the 100-year anniversary of when the first flight for circumnavigation left out of Seattle. So it's just kind of a full circle thing that everything's kind of lining up, and it's really exciting for me. So that's one of the projects that I got going on right now, is planning this. So it's me and 4 other people that are going to be in this airplane, and we're going to
rotate
down, and we're going to rotate out, and we got a bed in the back of the airplane so we can rest and fly and trade off back and forth. And we're going to make 10 stops and just fly westbound around the world and set the speed record doing it.
That's incredible. And that's so fun too, because it's something so unique. And this is kind of the stuff I'm talking about, because I've realized that so many people get bogged down by life where they're just focused. Oh, dude, can't wait for the vacation. Can't wait for this. Can't wait for that. And it's like, dude, find your vacation, create your trip, create your experience. Because there's only so many things. And what Bart's talking about is a fantastic example of creating his own experience.
Yeah.
Like,
and the opportunities as a business owner, those opportunities are there. It's definitely helped me being a business owner to have those opportunities for sure. Opportunities that I don't think I would have had, as just an employee, working for an airline or something. So,
well, because then you got to ask the favor, can I rent the jet for a week or 2 days or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's it's a very cool.
You also don't have that expansive thought of like, wait, this would be really cool.
Right.
Like, this would be really, really cool.
I remember I was reading this book at home thinking, and like hatching this idea in my head, like I could just go do this. And I'm like, no, that's crazy. Like, what are you thinking of? Then I'm like, no, I could do it. I mean, why can't I do it? I mean, I mean, physically it's easy, we know how to do it. We have the resources, we have the people, we have the knowledge. I mean, why couldn't we do this? This isn't crazy. So yeah, it's exciting. It's interesting.
100%. And that's something that like you start to realize that every single one of you has assets with you, whether they're your mindset, your body, whatever it is, where you can do incredible things like Bart's talking about. Like, it's not like, oh, it was cool for Bart. No, I want Bart to be an example or an inspiration for you listening and to come up with something that's like, yo, what would be my flight around the world? Like everyone's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The hardest part is just doing it, right? The hardest part is just saying you're going to do it and then do it.
Yeah. And following through on your word. Absolutely. Absolutely. Bart, you're incredible, man. You're absolutely incredible. Where can people learn more about global jet care and like do you have any final things you want to touch on?
Um, Boy, I mean, we're like I said, we're based just north of Tampa here in Brooksville, Florida, the center of the universe up here. And um, yeah, I would just, if anybody is ever interested in airplanes or aviation, I love to share aviation. I have a Boy Scout group that I run with kids, to try to help them learn about the opportunities in aviation. And I am very available and open if anybody has any interest in aviation whatsoever, whether it's I mean, people think this is crazy, but I've had people who are not in aviation at all, who are working, installing air conditioning or doing some other job, and then they in the past and have called me and said, "Well, I'd love to do be a pilot like what you guys do." And I said, "Man, go get your pilot's license. Literally within 2 years, you could come to me and I could hire you, and you could be on a mission flying to Greece tonight to go pick somebody up." And I've done it. I've had multiple employees that are now with the airlines or with, somewhere else that they've moved on to that have come and started from nothing. And within 2 years working for me and work for me for 3 or 4 years and gain all this experience and then they can do anything they want. So if anybody has any interest in aviation whatsoever, I mean, I can point you in the right direction. It's a pretty interesting thing to do. So we have.
Absolutely. And just to give a little more context about the pre-flights, all of that stuff, like to get your private license, what do you think the cost around there would be? And then like what does that
Yeah.
look like? Slash like how many times are they going up? Because I know the Davis Island one, I think the pre-flight was like $200 or something, and like they bring you up and down
Yeah.
and you get yeah.
You can do like what's called a discovery flight, and that's the
Yeah.
easiest thing to do. And they're somewhere between 100 and $200, and it's a 30-minute flight, where you just go out with an instructor, they throw you in the seat, start the airplane and take off and say, "This is what it's like. This is what it feels like. This is what you would be doing. If you were taking a lesson today, I would be showing you this and you would be learning this." And it's just hey, a lot of people have to send their kids for discovery flights and that just to see if it's something they have, see if that bug is there, see if they have any interest in it. And that's a super easy, cheap thing to do. But to actually learn it, it's just like learning anything else. If you do it every single day, you learn it really quick. I mean, you pick up on it really quick. I was a flight instructor for years, and I've had hundreds of students over the years. And the ones that want to fly twice a day, every day, and have the resources to do that, and are there in the morning to do the ground school, and then a flight, and then lunch, and then another flight, and then more ground school, those people within 20 or 30 days have their pilot's license. I mean, it's really simple. And because you do it so fast, that's the cheapest way to do it. You could probably do that somewhere in the under $20,000. I mean, it's probably a $15,000 thing, realistically. But then there's other people that want to fly the second Tuesday of every month, and you're never going to get it done. You just
Well,
not. It's hard to retain, especially somebody who's once you get older, it's just harder to retain. But so I tell everybody, I'm like, if you have the opportunity, if you have the ability to just dive in and do it more than once a week, do 3 or 4 times a week. If you have the ability to do that within a month or so, you can get your private pilot's license, and you can get it for the most, it's still, nothing's cheap, but it's still the most inexpensive way of doing it.
but the important thing I think you bring up there that a lot of people don't realize is like all skills are acquired. It's just the
Mhm.
amount of reps we take. And when you sit there, I kind of think about it. I'm like, damn, I still haven't done my discovery flight and
Yeah.
I'm 28 years old. Like
Yeah.
that means I've wasted so much of my life not getting that first rep in. Because
Yeah.
in reality, most things you can get pretty good in like 20, 30 hours. And
Sure.
it's just, are you able to put in, when do you put in those hours? And we usually delay in our life that first hour. And I'm saying like part of it, I want the audience to realize that it's like, yes, half of this is like fly a plane. That would be cool. Half of
Mhm.
it's also do the hobby that you've been pushing off, do the thing that you've been pushing off, because there's no reason in life, there's no better time in life to start than now.
Sure.
Like
Absolutely.
it's super
Absolutely.
important.
And especially if people have an interest in aviation, now is like such an incredible time. It's the most amazing time I've ever seen in aviation. The opportunities are there. Like like I said, you could go from absolutely nothing to having a really good. I mean, I have people that I know in aviation and employees that work for me that are well over 100, 150, even $200,000 range, and they just started flying 2, 3 years ago. I mean, they just started and they knew nothing about it, you don't necessarily have to go to college for it, and you don't have to go to whatever. It's just one of those things that you can learn it, and only because there is such a huge demand for it right now. I mean, now is such a good time to get into this thing. It's crazy. It's different than it ever has been. But
Oh, definitely. And it's what people don't realize is it's a skill that you acquire
oh
and
yeah,
then you get
if
paid
you
for the
can
skill.
you can ride a bike and drive your car, you can learn to fly an airplane. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, depending on now how far you want to go and how much you want to learn and what you want to know. It takes more and more, desire
In
and
depth.
knowledge
Yeah,
to
of
do it. But
course.
the first part, just learning to fly and do whatever is a fairly simple task. If you're capable of doing it, there's some people that are terrified of the flying, terrified of heights and whatever. That's not going to work. But if you don't have those issues, you can learn it pretty easily, and it's a pretty easy thing to do, and it's a lot of fun, and it lasts forever. Pilot's license doesn't expire. You got to keep it current and do a few things to keep your skills up. But once you have it, you have it.
Yeah, and it's a skill set that you can always bring around. And the idea of being like, oh, I could just go from Tampa to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Key West for a
Mhm.
burger and
Sure,
fly back is like a fascinating concept.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's you'd be amazed look driving around little airports how many people just own their own little airplane. Weekend hobbies. Even here in Brooksville, man, you go out to the over to the we have some T hangars over here, and you'll see a dozen people with their hangar doors open and working on their airplanes, and it's a community. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And most people sit there and they go, oh, this has got to be the most expensive thing ever. And it's like, no, if you want to do the hobby, you can learn about it and you can get
Right.
exposure, but it could also make a lot of money too, which is super
Yeah.
important
I've
because
had several of my friends are like, it's probably really expensive. And then I look at their boat, I look at what they do, their weekends, and I'm like, yeah, let me tell you, nothing's cheap. There's no cheap hobby out there.
yeah,
So if you're,
exactly. But the learning process, and I think it's very good to continue learning, like even if it's in your craft or outside of your craft, because it allows you to understand people that are different from you, which is the most important.
yeah, right. And it's the information is so widely available now. I mean, I to this day watch YouTube videos on flying and on, if you get any idea, like, oh, I wonder what this is, or I wonder how you learn this. I just go to YouTube and I type it in, and all of a sudden here's a guy that's got a 20-minute, class on it. And I'm like, perfect. That's all I needed. So it's so easy to do now, as far as learning to fly, and that everything is just so accessible and so easy. I'm like, it just, now's the time.
Absolutely. So, Bart, where can people hear more about you, hear more about Global Jet?
Um,
Would you say your website,
yeah,
probably?
yeah, we have a website. It's globaljetcare.com. All of our information is there. You can actually track our airplanes there. You can, all of our airplanes are open to be tracked. So I mean, you can click on it and kind of, you can see where we're going. You can see a lot of what we're doing. I'm a terrible social media guy. I've never been involved in it. In fact, literally when I'm done with this podcast, I'm meeting with another guy, one of our pilots who's phenomenal at it, to get him to take over our social media and our Facebook, and sort of get some more information out there on us, because I've never been into that. But yeah, I mean, we do actually have a Facebook page, and I think here coming up, you're going to see a lot of stories posted of places we're going and things we do. The logistics behind some of the stuff we do is mind blowing sometimes. I mean, just to move somebody from one part of the world to the other, pilots have time limitations on how many hours we can fly and how many hours we can be on duty. But once we put a patient in the back of that airplane, we can't just stop and take them to a hospital and wait for the pilots to rest and then keep going the next day. So if we pick a patient up in, say, Greece, and we're flying them to LA, we'll have to pre-position pilots, out on the road somewhere to be ready to go. So one set of pilots will go pick up the patient and they'll make a stop en route somewhere. We got to change pilots out and then keep going. So the logistics of getting these people in place, it can take 8 or 10 people, out on the road in position somewhere waiting just to move somebody from one point to another. So
Honestly, what would be really cool, because I do a lot of social media. So like after this podcast, I'll clip it up and I'll connect with you guys and
yeah,
I'll shoot you an email and get you all that. But what would be really cool is like all of your pilots, if you get them linked up with your Instagram, like they don't have to they'll have their
sure.
own Instagram, but then they could just switch accounts. And it's like, good morning from Thailand. And then
Oh
it's like,
yeah.
good afternoon from Tampa, like blah, 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 blah. And you
Yeah.
got like things all over the world. Everyone look at that, go, what are these guys doing? Because it's going
Yeah,
to be like
I
10
see
people on
it.
the account. That would be cool.
I get on my Facebook, I get on in the morning, I wake up here and I'm looking at my mail and I open Facebook up. And of course I'm friends with all the people, all the employees on Facebook. So I pull it open and, I got some people in Germany and I got one crew that's in Iceland and they're posting pictures of what they're doing. And, they're talking about, what they're doing. And I'm like, man, why don't I have this on my, like, how do I get this over? And I'm just, I'm clueless when it comes to a lot of social
Well,
media stuff. So
it wouldn't even have to be you. It would basically be them posting on
that's what I mean. I'm like,
your platform, like
how do
just
I not
posting.
connect this? So yeah, I have one of my pilots that does it all the time, and a lot of times he'll tag us in it, and it'll show up on ours, and I'm like, okay, you gotta take this over and get this so that it's all because just the pictures alone are awesome. Some of the pictures that we take that our pilots take,
The aerial ones in the sky.
yeah,
Like
yeah, it's amazing, and the stories, and then a lot of times, like I said, the people we fly are everyday people. I mean, these aren't celebrities or anything. These are everyday people that when they get back home are posting on their Facebook, right, and they're telling their story. They're posting on their social media, like, "Hey, my husband and I were in Greece, and this happened to us, and we had this private Learjet come and fly us home, and here's the people that flew us." So all those stories are out there, but they're just not in a
we just need them to know that it's global jet care.
right. So yeah, so that's that I'm working on that slowly but surely. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bart, you are
yeah,
incredible. I'm so glad we got to do this just because it's
yeah.
been
Thanks for
something I've
having me.
wanted to do for a while. And after I heard your story, I was like, I don't know anyone who does this. Like, this is fascinating. It's so different, so unique. And I'm glad you got to come on the podcast.
Yeah, people ask all the time. They're like, what do you do for a living? What does your company do? And I'm like, oh man, how do I explain this? Because this
Well, hopefully now you
is
can
a
just hand them
lot.
the podcast. Just send
Yeah,
them the
right. There you go. Here, listen to this. Look at our social media. Well, thanks.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.